Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and happy International Women's Day. So today, the 8th of March, actually marks the 109th International Women's Day, a period of time that seems both incredibly long and not long enough. But International Women's Day was founded on the back of the fight for gender equality in society, a legacy which we have continued through into today. But I also realised that grandiose statements like that can seem a little bit intimidating when you want to help, you want to make a difference, you want to exert your rights and fight for equality but don't really know how. And I think, as I do with everything, that books are the perfect starting point. Therefore, I was incredibly pleased when Penguin Platform asked to sponsor today's video, which is all about ways that you can practice activism on small or large scales and the books that might inspire the ways that you do that. Now, Penguin Platform itself creates incredible content surrounding books aimed at teens and young adults. You can find everyone from Stormzy to Margaret Atwood on their channel. And I remember from personal experience that when you're a teen and a young adult, people often dismiss your experiences and your opinions. However, your part to play is just as big, if not bigger, than anyone else's. So hopefully you'll all find a little bit of inspiration from this video, whether you're 16 or 60. Now, one of the most radical things that I think anyone can do is to educate themselves, to both broaden your own horizons and also understand issues more deeply. So when you feel passionately and strongly about something and want to go out there and talk about it, then you have the knowledge and the tools to do that, and books are such an incredible way to facilitate that. Not to mention that education is not something that women have always had or still have access to, depending on where you live today. Oxford University managed to exist for almost 400 years before it ever let a woman step through its threshold. So when you have access to education, exercising that right is one of the most radical things you can do. So even if you've not reached the threshold to exercise your right to vote, which is a whole other issue, votes for 16-year-olds, you can still educate yourself in order to engage in conversations and speak up for what you believe in. So one of the books I wanted to recommend to you is I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai, which is aptly subtitled The Girl Who Stood Up for Education and Was Shot by the Taliban. Now, Malala grew up in Pakistan and her father was a teacher. She'd been raised to value the importance of education and always been incredibly enthusiastic about learning herself. So when the Taliban attempted to take that away from her and the right of all girls access to education, she said no, and it put her in an incredibly dangerous situation. However, as you know, she actually survived and fled her country with her family and is now an international activist fighting for women and girls' right to education across the globe. The story in her book is both harrowing but incredibly inspiring, and I recommend it to absolutely everyone. But what can you do with all of that learning? Well, Virginia Woolf said it in 1929, but to simply write is an act of activism in itself, and given how long women's access to pen and paper has simply been restricted, it's something that we should all take advantage of, and you can do that in so many different ways. When I was at school, I joined the school newspaper and wrote on everything from vegetarianism to access to abortion. Every time you write something and put it out into the world, there's always the chance that it might just catch one other person's eye and make them think more deeply about a topic. Write for your school newspaper, write into newspapers and magazines, start your own personal blog. And almost a century on from A Room of One's Own, we actually have access to so many other forms of media outlet. I mean, where are we right now? Set up a YouTube channel, whether it's with friends or your school or a local community centre or on your own. Any and all of these can be incredibly useful tools to activists old and new. Or do you want to talk about these issues in person? Why not start up a book club at your school, at your library, at your community centre, or just amongst a group of friends, much like Marin does in Rules for Being a Girl by Candace Bushnell. In this YA novel, Marin is sexually harassed by one of her teachers and nobody believes her. However, she refuses to let it go, both writing for her school newspaper and starting a feminist book club with fellow students who she then is able to share so much with and create such a supportive atmosphere around. Similarly, if you're looking for practical steps to take, there's nobody you could get more inspiration from than Effie in Vote for Effie by Laura Wood. In this book, Effie is the new girl at school and she decides to run for student politics against an incumbent who has yet to be unseated. But what I love most about Vote for Effie is the changes that Effie is able to enact, win or lose. I think this book really reminds you that you don't have to win an election, you don't have to be the person in power to still change the narrative, to change the conversation. There's no reason you can't start a petition or a campaign for a girls' football team if for some reason your school still only has a boys' one. Or like Effie, speak up for those who are much less comfortable getting up there in public and saying how they feel about what's going on. Effie is able to create this magnificent group of friends that even includes those that perhaps she thought were her enemies to begin with, because they simply hadn't really thought about the unfairness or the injustice or inequality of the situation that they were currently supporting beforehand. So never underestimate the difference of simply pointing out the problems. For real life examples, simply look at the impact someone like Greta Thunberg has had on just changing the conversation and simply encouraging more of us to just think about and talk about a topic that we perhaps weren't giving the time of day through a tried and tested method like striking, but putting it in a school environment and taking time off class to stand up for something that she believed in. And you can read some of Greta's inspiring and to-the-point speeches in her book, aptly named No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference. But if you find that you have begun to get involved in local organisations that fight for issues that you feel are important, then there's nobody you can learn more from than Angela Davis. Her book, Freedom is a Constant Struggle, explores the way practically that activist organisations have supported one another and learned from one another, especially in this time of digital media where we can see what's going on the other side of the world in a matter of minutes. Sometimes entirely different groups of activists have been able to lend their support both physically and digitally to those that are fighting for something that they also care about thousands of miles away, and that's what Freedom is a Constant Struggle highlights and continually reinforces the importance of solidarity. But if you're thinking of learning more, speaking up or getting involved in feminist activism, then something that is absolutely vital to keep in mind is including everybody in your activism and making sure that you're not excluding people who might otherwise be overlooked, that perhaps historically haven't had as much power or even face multiple different forms of discrimination. So if you're setting up a feminist book club, then that means making sure that space is inclusive to those from all different ethnicities, sexualities, gender identities and class backgrounds. A sentiment that is perfectly expressed in Audre Lorde's essay collection Sister Outsider. Audre Lorde was an amazing writer, poet, activist and academic in her own right, and this essay collection explores feminism, race, sexuality and solidarity all in one place, emphasising the importance of everyone's voice and learning from a diversity of experiences. One thing that you cannot say about Audre Lorde's writing is that she holds back her punches, but because of that there is something so incredibly empowering about all of her writing. It makes you think, it makes you angry, but also gets you raring to make a change. And with that, I hope that you got a little bit of inspiration from this video wherever you are in your activist journey and are able to carry on the spirit of International Women's Day into the rest of this year and onward. If you're interested in any of the books I've mentioned in this video, they will of course be linked down below in the description box. Thank you so much to Penguin Platform for sponsoring this video, and if you head on over to their channel then you may catch another little video in honour of International Women's Day featuring yours truly, which is a tour of bookshops in London that promote women's writing and women's voices, and there are tons more recommendations in there for you. And with that said, until next time, I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys!